I hit record and you froze, but I think you're back. You good?
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
Excellent. Jeff, great to see you again.
Great to see you too, Princey.
Been far too long. But that could be a weekend of not hanging out with each other. It'd be far too long.
Right back, yeah, right back at you. That's what it feels like.
So, Lauren is not here to ask you the first question. I know you've faced her down a few times. You faced down, I think, most of the kids actually, whether in person or on the original podcasts that we did together. She's retired. It's 9 p.m. over here, and she's a little under the weather, so she's off to bed. So she sends her apologies, and hopefully we'll see you in BTC Helsinki when we're all
I
over there
love
together.
I love that your kids are into this and how what you've done to bring them up to speed. They're remarkable.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Yeah, it's been right, she was 9 when she first started asking questions on these podcasts. When you
Yeah,
first spoke to her, she was 9, right?
yeah,
I think
that's so.
we had her, Samuel, and Caitlin in on that one, and that's when your book had just dropped, and it was. I don't know how quick were the Bitcoin community to your book? Had it been out for like a series of months at that point?
Pretty quick. It came out in January of 2020,
Oh
and
yeah, we were all over
and it
you.
was all over. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, there was. And do you like? Were you expecting that? Because like I think we touched on it before. Like I think the word Bitcoin is in there once, and like one of the back end or the very last chapter.
Yeah, so Bitcoin was only in it as a paragraph at the end and as a possible transition path. And there were a number of reasons for that. Number one, I felt like people needed to understand the problem before they could get to the solution. Number two, and quite honestly, I wasn't deep enough on Bitcoin yet to realize it was the only path. I thought at that time that it would be. I kind of thought in 5,000 years of human history, if we if every currency has always been centralized and then broken, then we had to be part of the centralizing. Um, and Bitcoin would have to withstand that. And I didn't realize how it would withstand that or how what that looked like. So I wasn't deep enough on Bitcoin at that time. So at that time I thought Bitcoin had a 5% probability of failing at some point, and then through trying to kill it and think about what I just continually reduce my probabilities. And yet, and funny enough, even today, like when I watch the world, kind of the chaotic world today, and how even most Bitcoiners are making it stronger through their actions by pricing Bitcoin in a derivative instrument in the centralizing currency, it reinforces to me what I thought before, right? How it's centralizing by our own actions, and what I think now, because enough people are moving their time and energy away from that to keep it decentralized. So that that cognitive dissonance that most people are going through in the world right now is kind of the thing that obviously it's going to be chaotic, um, because very few people are deep enough to understand what this really means.
Yes. So that's really interesting. I want to pick that apart a little bit because I'd love to know where do you in retrospect, where do you think you were in the rabbit hole when you were writing the book, when you were penning that chapter? Like how long had you been kind of looking at it? What were your touch points? What were your kind of
I'd been
references?
in, yeah, I'd been in since 2017. But but not to the point. I wasn't running a node. I wasn't I was I don't even think at that time. No, I had. By the time I wrote my book, I was in self custody, but I wasn't running a node. I wasn't. So you're just gaining more and more knowledge, just like why actually I see this in the entire kind of reflection of the world, what the world looks like, is I actually saw myself go through it, and I don't pretend to think that I knew it all at day one. Right? I had to as well go through the cognitive dissonance of these two different systems, even though I wrote the book on it, right? On what it would do. I had to challenge all of those prior beliefs that were impossible to match together from the system. I had to go through that kind of rewiring of my brain. And then I had to understand how I wasn't, the world just didn't conspire against me. I created, right? I create, like we all do, with our actions, with our thoughts, words, actions, and we literally influence it. And so how could you, if I was influencing the other world, right, through my actions, and quite honestly, if I was giving into fear, or if I was worried, or was yelling at that system, I was in tune actually making it stronger. And so all of these things I had to go through myself, right, to understand, okay, like nobody tells me what to do, right? I decide. And things can happen to me, but my mind controls how I interpret those things and where I give value. And so moving my time into this created tons of value, because I think a lot of, well, you're doing the same thing. Many of the people that we trust deeply in this community, not that we don't have disagreements with them, but we know who they are, and we know, and are the same. They just they spend more of their time. And actually some of the people even moving down to that level, I understand why they would look like that. I understand totally why they would look like that, and why the world would look like that to them. They just don't realize that they're giving up their own personal power and making the system stronger, and thinking it's somebody else. So the same journey, simply the same journey that I see everybody going through is the same journey that I went through. And maybe I was, maybe because of the way I think in first principles, and the way I chase things to the sand. I chased to the sand. Just so you know, I'd never read a book on economics, or any of the different belief patterns in Keynesian or on economics before I wrote my book. I came to the same realization through a different kind of fractal, through free markets, technology, and what that would look like. And then when the book landed, then I realized a whole bunch of people were talking about the same thing that I was talking about, in different words, different things throughout a long time, in different ways to be able to visualize the same thing. So I read all of those books. I take things down to the sand, and then I wanted to the same thing. Once I understood the problem so much, then I wanted to do the same thing in Bitcoin. And I almost tried to disprove what I thought could happen. And I still spend like over 10,000 hours trying to think of how I could kill Bitcoin. What would happen because of the centralization? What would that look like? And specifically, because we've talked about it personally, this is what inspires me to invest in things like Fedi and other things, to be able to provide the rails of what people don't know they need yet, but they desperately need it in time. So you're building to what the future needs, rather than where it is today.
Mate, so much to go on here. Right. Energy. You talked about like putting your energy towards something. And this is something that I think you brought up in your talk in Madeira. You had a moment, maybe it was 2020, 2021, obviously around the time that you were planning to start the fund, maybe 2022, where, because you were a busy guy, right? You were on the boards of all these different companies, and you had your fingers in many different pies, and you were really leaning in, and not in voluntary fashion in some cases, not always to make profit. And then click. One day you're like, why am I expending my energy in this system? This system that is destructive, that is, basically wrecking people. My energy and my skills is being sapped up by this, and I just need to like step to the left, and I'm in a completely different world. Why How did that all happen for you? What was the penny drop?
It was literally one night. Not emotional, but I could get emotional. It was just realizing I was a complete hypocrite, like a complete hypocrite, because I was doing the same thing. So essentially, what I was saying in Bitcoin, like many today, that's why I understand it in myself and how easy it is to do. Easy it is to do. I I was making one system that I knew was incompatible with the truth stronger through all my actions, and I was telling myself a believable lie that said I need to make enough money to be able to buy more Bitcoin, right, and to be able to protect my family. When what really that was a hedge. I had a hedge against a system collapse in Bitcoin that I was perpetuating the system collapse through my actions, perpetuating all of the things. And so I was making the thing I was most fearful stronger. And it went through all my time. I didn't it's one of those things you don't really know. It just so that's why incentives are so they just drag you in, and you can easily tell yourself, but I can't. I have to do this for my family. You can easily tell that. But I was very deep on both the existing system. I knew that there was no possible solve to the existing system from the system. And I knew, and at that point, I knew that Bitcoin could solve it, would solve it, as long as it stayed decentralized and secure. And then I had to ask myself just a really, when I myself haven't made that decision. So that's when we moved that's when we I moved my time. I went off a whole bunch of boards that I was previously on, and I moved my time into Bitcoin.
So this is going to hit hard to a lot of plebs that are still mining fiat to buy Bitcoin. They know they hate their jobs. They know they're in a bad spot mentally. Uh, there's no golden answer, but I think yes, having these discussions and having these realizations, what's keeping you from mining that fiat, from walking out from mining that fiat? What's keeping you there? It's that yeah. I
So
urge
so so
people to
so I
think
want
about
to
it deeply.
yeah, like I want to actually though I want to before you go there, I I am not saying this to say I'm better. I'm
Hmm.
equal to everybody. It is not, it's just an insight I have in me, and it has nothing to do with anybody else. It could have something to do with you, but it doesn't have to. If you are doing fiat and you're buying Bitcoin and everything, and you're talking about Bitcoin, then you are probably still impacting the world positively in how you're, and especially if you're running a node, especially if you're going deeper. And that might just be the step you need to take in whatever time you determine to be able to move more time. It's not up to me to tell you. It's not up to anybody to tell you. You should do exactly what feels right for you. I'm just saying for me, I hit a spot that I realized, what the hell am I doing? And I couldn't, and once I hit that spot, I couldn't not change. Right. I had to, because the existing system was sucking my energy. I told myself that I had to do it. So it had nothing to do with it was almost that realization that I literally have complete control of the world I see.
So I got a question now. Uh, you you turn to your wife and you're like, right, Kelly, I'm quitting all of that other stuff. And she's like, oh, I can imagine, like, roll her eyes. Here we go again, because that's what I get, right?
Yeah.
What you, what now? How was that received? And with your colleagues and the people that you were resigning from as well, like,
Yeah, so it was and and I didn't resign the next day. I gave people time. I transitioned and everything else. But I just said this was and I said to Kelly, we're going to make way less money. Until one time, and it is not about money, but my energy is going to be in this. And if we're right, it's going to do way better in time. That's exactly what's happened. Like if people saw what things look like now and what I get to do now, um, it's so hard to describe what it looked like before, and it looked good, right? Like it's not like I didn't have wealth before, didn't, but I had to remove it all, risk the same thing of what if no money comes, what if I'm wrong, what if all of the same thing that everyone would, and move it to the world I wanted to see, and it the world I wanted to see and what happened is so much more powerful than I can even describe to people. So I won, like I'm winning as a result of, and this people I spend my time with, and why I'm at kind of this nexus of where we're going is because I was not afraid to do that. What's great about kind of telling my wife that I lost everything in 2017 after I walked for the same reason. I could not um, be in a business that was going to wipe out a whole bunch of other friends of mine. So I left and without severance and went from $100 million to 0 million, zero, not $1 million, zero, underwater, lost everything. So it wasn't that, and from that point where I'd lost everything, what I really found is I didn't lose anything. I had all the same friends, all the same relationships, all the same people who cared about me. And building back wealth again came really fast because I was congruent in who I was. Right. In fact, I wouldn't have written a book because I wouldn't have had enough time to write the book had I not uh, walked away from everything. So my family's always seen that, and I'm not afraid to. But um, is it is it are there some low points? Are there some am I right points? And as I trade this in and all of that, yes. But the question is, am I on the right path? And if I'm not on the right path, I have no problem changing my mind to say, am I on the right path?
And this is something that we talk about with the kids a lot. It's like, define wealth, right? Define rich. Like, what are you rich in? What are you wealthy in? And when you do make these big decisions, like we've done in the past as well, you realize that you were basically measuring in all the wrong units, right?
Totally.
You,
Totally.
but we like you get so much, like the value that I have accrued from just pressing record on a Zoom call and
Yeah.
shipping it on the internet. That's all I did. But I get to hang out with people like you. I've got to know you and many, many others, people I now call my very, very close friends. That is priceless,
Totally.
untouchable. Or I could still be sat in my cubicle because I'd priced the risk completely upside down.
Yeah. That's it. That's exactly. And funny enough, if you just had said this, if you knew that the existing system is and most people don't know what we're saying. If you had a new system that was decentralized, secure, bounded by energy, and it was repricing the entire world, it was the first global free market that ever existed. And you could spend your time in it versus the other system, then that wouldn't say anything about the protocol. It would say something about you, right? It wouldn't say anything about the protocol. It would just say if this new protocol was imposing the free market and you knew that and decided to that's what I realized. I realized that it didn't say anything about me, about the protocol. It said something about me where I chose to spend my time. And as I chose to spend my time on the thing that was based on truth, unifying, hopeful, abundant, everything else, what do you think happens, right? It just reinforces that. Now I don't, that's why I want to be careful of that, because it doesn't make me better or worse or anything else. It just, I saw it earlier than maybe many other people have see it in themselves. And so people are somewhere along that cognitive dissonance break across 8 billion people. We're so early in that process. So it would, all the chaos that you would see as but and you could say this, if we're right, this thing is, this thing stays decentralized and secure, bounded by energy, and this, all these things happen because of us, what we're doing. If we're right, then all of the other chaos that you see in the world would just be a natural extension. It would have to look like that. There is no way to move from this system to this system without that chaos. It would just, so when you see it, you just, yeah, that's exactly what it would look like as more people start trying to negotiate with this protocol. With as many people will try to again and again and again cheat this protocol. It would have to look like that. So I'm nothing, like when I watch the world unfolding, nothing is surprising.
When you look at the last year, in very interesting year for Bitcoin. We had the ordinals grifting, the spamming. We had centralization issues over like mining pools, for example. And of course, like possibly the biggest news of last year started in January was the ETFs, which you and I knew were coming. Like, and so did many people. It was inevitable that it was going to happen. It What gave you pause for thought, or did anything give you pause for concern?
Well, you already know the answer, because how many times over drinks we've talked about this at like a very deep level. And you had to expect all of these things, and I expect way more from this very simple statement, right? If the natural state of the free market is deflation, then you've never seen it before. No one has. There's no history textbook, there's no book that has ever described this on a long-term global free market. In other words, every single market you've ever known, every single book you've ever read, all the conspiracy theories in those books and everything else, everything is tied to the same thing. We've never lived in a free market. We lived in a control system. Everything. So from your control system, you would think all of these things are right, wrong, and you'd give them way more influence than you thought. Think. But that would also mean that humans were susceptible of that control system, of giving up their power over and over and over again, right? And the only thing you would have to understand is nothing else. If Bitcoin stayed decentralized and secure, it doesn't care about your control system, doesn't care about anything. It is the global free market, and every new node, every new person that means faster deflation, means faster value, means more abundance, and both of those things would be true. So now, how do we negotiate with that? And what would you expect? You would expect that the centralizing system would have the upper hand, because we've always done that, right? We've always done that. And so, in fact, what we're talking about right now is, I've been talking about for 5 years, and a lot of our investments or different things to be able to make sure, right, that and not just us, 1031 and other really good funds and other people too, and a whole bunch of cypherpunks and are creating the fabric to ensure that's true. You mentioned Bitcoin mining. Ocean Protocol, right, is a really good, Ocean is a really good example of another network participant that is ensuring the decentralization and security of this, and providing different pathways. But what do humans do? They centralize, and every single person pricing their Bitcoin from a piece of paper is part of the centralization, and the centralization will be easier to the UX on the centralization will feel easier. It'll be tied into the banking system. It'll be tied in because why? Because if you could create Bitcoin on top of the US dollar, underneath the US dollar, what you would do is you'd move from the essentially imperialism 1.0 gold, imperialism 2.0 petrodollar system, imperialism 3.0 Bitcoin. And so now let's ask what that would do, right? It wouldn't resolve the debt, but it would have a store of value underneath the debt that the debt would feel safer, right? So the rise in value in Bitcoin would, and then on top of that system, you'd still require an inflationary monetary system. The inflationary monetary system has to be more centralizing because it's stealing money. And more people, both in Bitcoin, pricing Bitcoin in a piece of paper, would think, I'm getting rich, right? Rich and richer and richer and richer. And they would be essentially making the trade in the US pieces of paper, which would be totally natural. And then they would not just make the trade, they would centralize to ETFs, MicroStrategy, a whole bunch of other things. And those would centralize to Coinbase, and it would keep on centralizing. Now, at some point, that system has to attack Bitcoin, not because they're opposite systems, right? One is deflationary, global free market deflationary, and so the value we each contribute to society flows to all of us. We win, right? If I create more value for you and you use my, but you do too, and so does everybody else. And then somebody competes with me to provide more value. And if I can't provide more value, I fail and somebody else wins. And all of that abundance keeps flowing to 8 billion people on society. And it has to be stopped by that centralizing system. Has to. Because this centralizing system is based on inflation and a different derivative contract. So it has to get worse. So when people are talking about Rockefeller and this and all the conspiracy theories and everything else, I don't know if they realize that they're reinforcing this, right? All of their time is going into, and because a lot of people, that might be true. There might be kind of an evil conspiracy cabal of that. It's mostly incentives. And the incentives create the power in that evil cabal because we give it power. Because we wouldn't let that system collapse. We would not let that system collapse because it would go to zero. Everything would go to zero. Your house would be worth zero. This Zoom call wouldn't work. It would all go to zero because it's built on a piece of paper or a credit instrument that if the credit instrument allowed deflation would all default to zero. Prices would capitulate and then keep going until people made up more units. So it's not them, or it might be, right? Because if you had all the power and you had control of the government through your power, you would want people continuing to believe that, right? It's those other people, and let's keep on doing this. And so you would be in cahoots with that same thing. So effectively what you see today is the globalists have been replaced with the technocrats. And the technocrats are smarter than the globalists. And it's still accruing to centralization, right? And most people are giving the technocrats all their power. And I don't want to say, because it's not people, it's us giving that more power. And so that would have a lot of strength, a lot of power against Bitcoin. So if we just carried that forward, what has to happen, not what might happen, what has to happen at some point, that centralized power has to come after Bitcoin. Has to. And at that point, you want hyper-Bitcoinization, that's the point. Because if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure at that time, and the chain split says you can only spend this Bitcoin, or this is the US dollar currency Bitcoin, and you can't operate on it, that chain split will create something like an order of magnitude greater than 2017 that probably takes down the entire financial system that tried to cheat Bitcoin. Now, it's not a foregone, because now how will you act in that? Like if you had two tokens, and one everybody was telling you this is the one you have to use, and it's now a whole bunch of value that you could lose, which one are you keeping? And through that little thought experiment, you can see how hard the decentralization is in security, because we will tell ourselves a different story. But what makes me really positive on this story is I know the people. I know so many people who, once they understand this, they're not choosing the other one. And most of the other people that think they have the power because they've always had the power don't run nodes, don't run economic nodes, aren't educating every day, aren't doing this. They're trusting a centralized entity with all of their power. And we both know that you can't buy in this, you can't buy people. You can't buy enough people because it's decentralized and secure. So again, if you just thought through that, and I'd love for if somebody wants to challenge that or go deeper on that, let's challenge it, go deeper on it. But what it really says on both sides of this is we decide. And if there's enough of we who decide to move our time, there's nothing that any they can do about it. Nothing.
I remember again in Madeira, you had the line in your speech, "There is no they, just us."
Yeah.
And I think that's how you signed off.
Yeah, and you know, in that Madeira speech, I got really emotional,
Mm-hmm.
and I got emotional because of this piece. When you see yourself as a connection to 8 billion people in the world, and what you do matters, and you can see that all of the abundance gained from all of the creativity from all of the people is going to flow to the entire world. That's a big deal. Like it's the biggest deal that's ever existed, because we've never lived in that. And so how are each of our actions, each of our thoughts, each of what we're doing on this podcast, what you're doing in your free time, what you're doing with your kids, what every action you take impacts other people, either positively or negatively. And when you see your actions can positively impact more people, and you can choose to do and remove yourself from all of the fear of what everyone else has to do or what they should do or those people, because it's just a narrative that we believe and we fall prey to, that there's some other power over us. When we see we actually have it all, and we can do it, and the beauty of that, and then these ideas bouncing into other people, we see more ideas and we see more, wow, that's possible. That's possible. It's just it's just a really, really powerful, abundant place to be.
Now I got to hold my hands up here, Jeff, and I'm guilty of being a mouthpiece, pointing at these people and just trying to educate people as to what's been done in the past. Rockefellers, for example, with the formation of the General Education Board, for example. My feelings about that and education and how they've indoctrinated, and so I mean, what, 3 generations probably by now, and how they use that as a tool for social engineering and creating compliance and capturing the energy, not only capturing the medical system as well, and pushing all this allopathic medicine through and keeping people just sick enough. Like it's so disgusting. And all of it has happened. And we forget the big one. 1910, the meeting at Jekyll Island, heavily involved in that.
Yep.
In fact, Rockefeller's son was married to Nelson Aldrich's daughter. That's why you have Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller a little bit further down the line. So it's difficult, because when you do see these things, it's so difficult not to scream, look, like, it's like, it's Cassandra, right? That tries to warn the townspeople. Like, And you just get completely ignored most of the time. Some people do pick up on it and go a little bit deeper and pick up a book themselves. Uh, but yeah, so your stoicism is on another level because I know you know everything I just said about those people and what they've done, but you've managed to completely disconnect from it, and to I get what you're saying.
I'll give you an
By
example.
me
And
by me by me
yeah,
doing that, I'm feeding it.
I'll give you an example. And then the only question for you and your family, is that valuable for you and your family? And so, and let's just kind of, I've talked about kind of love and belonging before, right? And how
Mhm.
that's, you can easily, just like everyone else, you can easily get caught in your own circle and not know how it impacts you negatively, because there's a whole bunch of other people in your circle that love you for pointing it out, and they reinforce that and they reinforce that and they reinforce it, and then you want to dig deeper. And the only question I would ask is, how beneficial is it for you, your family, and everything else? Because you can get sucked into that hole, and it can feel valuable because a whole bunch of other people also deem it valuable, and you're the light that brought this to me. But can they move from there, right? Because what happens is, what what fear, pain, everything else keeps us locked in, and it makes the existing system stronger. And so that's a question of, where is your energy better? I'll give you an example. Tomorrow, I'm going down to this organization, 400 family offices, called Forward Global. It was set up by the Rockefeller Foundation, and I can see, like a long time ago when it was a different name, 400 family offices, and I can see inside the programming a lot of the a lot of this. But they asked me to come down because they saw a presentation that I gave it in Costa Rica, where I talked about all of these things are impossible to solve from the system. So there's 400 family offices that believe that all of the things can be solved from the existing system, and are contributing and making it worse, and it works. And if I attacked them, because they don't know what we're talking about, they have no idea. They're they're pawns in a machine, right? That have no clue that they're part of the thing that's they hate, that they're worried most about the world, just like other. But if I went and attacked all those people without their knowledge, what would they think about me? Would I be able to have that conversation? Would I be able to take that conversation to a different level and have themselves see how they in turn show up in the world? The answer is probably not. So who would lose from me not being able to? We would lose, right? From that, and I wouldn't even see it, right? If that was the case. And again, this is not me preaching to anyone to how they should live their life, because one of the things I really appreciated, actually, I really appreciate some of the people that are yelling and everything else, and I can watch. Huh, wow, that's cool. Or they pierced a bubble in a different way than I would pierce a bubble, and I appreciate it. And I think it's a really great. So again, it's not better or worse. It's better for me.
When did you get, like foster this stoic way of thinking? Like, is this something like you've always just naturally had, or something you've studied in the past, like back as a kid?
Both curiosity. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes this is gonna sound crazy. It's crazy. Sometimes I feel things and I can see things that are so far away from what is general. Like, I can actually feel the future. I can feel, or a glimpse of it. Um, and then just trying to resolve paradoxes in my own mind. And once seeing them in my own mind, why I'm completely unafraid to completely unafraid to say what I thought before, where I was wrong, what I think now, what does that look like, is because it's just you're constantly learning. You're constantly saying, I keep doing that. If you look around at the world and everybody else is doing their own form of um, holding themselves back, then you realize you must be too.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question is where and
Mm-hmm.
how would I see it? Um, if no one else can see it in themselves, if they have a really hard time, and very few people tell each other, like with honest how they care about where they're holding each other back, they kind of reinforce their belief. Then, and you can see it in other people, then it also means you can't see it in yourself. So how do you hold to so some of my seeing it in myself, trust me, lots of areas to see it in myself and unlock, um the was out of a curiosity in others why they couldn't see it in themselves, and then realizing that I'll simplify when I and you know how many times I've said I think humans we are in service of love and belonging, and virtually everything we do in some ways comes down to we want to matter through that, right? And we don't know how we push away that by trying to get it. And you could say, kind of the victim archetype that I use lots of times, that they can't see that they're actually love and belonging is all around them all the time, but they're pushing it away with all their might. Or the billionaire trying to get more money and has no time for the family, and they're spending all the time with all the people that are saying you matter, you matter, you matter, and they wonder why their family is pushing them away. They're saying and they move more towards it, and they, everywhere, or the person that is yelling at the world, right, doing this exact same thing. And now I'm trying to move to a higher level of consciousness from that spot, means you have to leave all of the people who was with love and belonging, right? And that would feel really hard to do. So when I could see that in everyone else, then I realized it in me too, that I would do the very same things. Part of the reason I'm on this show with you right now is my love for you, right? So the same that same thing. Um, so it's not bad or good, it just is. And we do a bunch of those things, and then so how do you not go off the reservation there? How do you be honest with yourself on what it really is about, rather than what you're tricked into, what your ego won't let you see it's about?
How do you do that?
I'll give you a hack. One of the things I did is um, if somebody was to ask Kelly on a scale of 1 to 10 what our relationship was, what would her answer be when they talked to her? And if it wasn't a 10, not if, what could it be? If it wasn't a 10, I just kind of went through that mental thought experiment. And okay, imagine somebody else went to her and say, what's the relationship? If it wasn't a 10, it was me. What would each of my kids say? If it wasn't a 10, it was me. What would my business partners say? What would my friends say? If it wasn't a 10, it wasn't me? Because what we do, and so it created, and I used to ask and still do often, but kind of those series of questions in a mental game I played with myself every night. Um, and it forced me to see the thing, because every time it was a 6 or a 7 or a 5 or something like that, and remember it was somebody else asking the question, so it wasn't me, then I immediately went to what defending my reality, defending why it's not me to blame, it's somebody else or something else. And as I went to defend it, I started catching myself and realized, it is all me. I choose all my time. I choose everything. I choose how I think about the world. I choose my time. I choose the Everything and everything I do is a choice. So it has to be me. Now I could choose differently, right? Or fix that thing, and fixing that would be a way I try to keep the bar really high on me losing what it's really about.
Man, it's some deep, deep stuff. Right. Okay. So first of all, I want to give a shout out to Rob Brinded, close friend of ours, because he talks about what you just talking about, love and belonging, and he has a little talk. He uses a hamster wheel on a whiteboard. So imagine yourself on the hamster wheel, and you've got love and belonging up there. That's all you want. And the faster you run, and the harder you try to get to it, it's like Tantalus, right? You
Further
can't
away.
reach
Yeah.
it. You'll never get there.
and
So
and 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 so as you keep going, but and the more you do that, the more you say it's other people.
right.
Right?
You start making excuses because
The
you feel as though
more
you're trying your hardest, you're trying your absolute hardest to get there.
every,
But
every yeah, every other thing is creating and is pushing it further away. So that's a Rob and I connected in Madeira on this topic, and and yeah, no, I think he does a really good job. But I didn't know he had that topic, and it's the same topic that I've seen for a long time. He's a coach, and
so where to go now? We've kind of done stoicism, um, the aha moment, big. So setting up the fund, like that was obviously a huge part of your life and something you must have thought about very, very deeply. What what did that what did that look like from the inside for you? Because you know it's not every day somebody decides to set up a fund and try and
exactly.
attract tens of millions of dollars from other people to
It's not
invest in like esoteric shit, right? That's
it's not as deep as like his. It was a decision and go, and had no idea if we would be successful or not. The kind of a couple things inside that, and this we try to improve all the time. But I thought, um, what would have because I hated venture capital funds for the most part, and I'd
Mhm.
taken money from them, and uh, most were extractive. Now, and I'm not saying they had to be extractive, but partners had never run businesses before. They were capital providers, and they would say one thing, do another. It was all about money.
Mhm.
And so in understanding how Bitcoin looked and the change it was going to make in the world, um, I wanted to be part of a fund that that I would want the money from. Right. That had a really high bar on integrity and and lots of companies fail, right? In timing markets and everything else. So the majority of the companies that any venture capital fund looks at, or any capital fund, would fail. But there's a way to go through that in a way to increase the odds of that they succeed by being really tight with founders, and so they can see around corners. Because then I think about how many mistakes I made on the way through, and if I had somebody who really cared about me, I would have made less mistakes because I had the deepening trust, and the less mistakes would have created value faster. Um, and so I thought through that for me, anyways, and I needed to be part of. If I was going to create a fund or be part of a fund, I needed to be. For me, it needed to look like that. So we just created something that looked like that. Now, for a lot of capital that it was playing the other game, this wouldn't seem normal, right? And so the first fund, it was hard to, well, we were oversubscribed at first, and then FTX happened and everything else, and we were undersubscribed, and it was a grind, like just about anything I've ever done. You go in thinking, oh, it's going to be great, and then you get into it's hard. It's really, and you're learning things, and then through, um, there isn't a company in our portfolio yet that's failed, and more so, they all still have chances of not really good chances of staggering value as we transition. Some of the there's a number of companies in our portfolio that are already profitable in Bitcoin every month and growing like at a rate you couldn't imagine. Um, and the deeper why to that is probably because we care. We think about this process. We think about how to help. We will have failures, but my hope is even the failures that those companies, if those founders decide to do something else later on, they'd come to us, right? Because of the way you went through that. So, but it wasn't some magical thing. Like it wasn't a whole bunch of research and this is what this looks like. It was a decision. I'm doing this. Let's jump in to the deep end and figure out what this looks like. That's really what it looked like. And then we're now raising fund 2, which is so the first fund we raised, I think it was 26.2 million plus an SPV of 7.5 million. And this fund is 100 million and it's 2/3 subscribed already. So if you do proof of work, if you do what you say you're going to do, and then other people start to take notice and they start to, wow, this is really different. This is really powerful. And if you just said and this ties to what we were talking about before for each individual, if the world is going this way, all of the value that you could create is the other way, right? As this centralizes and the next outcomes and what has to happen, then having vision of what everybody's stuck with, essentially, what does an entrepreneur thrive on? Helping somebody else solve their pain in a way they don't know they have. That's what the entrepreneurial process is. It comes out of scarcity. It comes out of like we're literally abundance making machines in the free market. We've solved everything we turn the computer chip that runs this and my computer is made from grains of sand, right? We turn things into abundance. We found fertilizers just when we needed fertilizers, right? The amount of things that just come out of our mind to create more value, that's the entrepreneurial process. So you would expect that if you had this chaotic, broken, and everybody confused in this, and you were not confused, you were on the ledger providing more value, and you were building more value on this, you'd expect a whole bunch of these people to move over, and that's what you're seeing in your podcast, the growth of your podcast. That's what just about every single person who has moved their time from this to this and providing value is saying. So it would be natural. So when I think about that and Bitcoin, and this is underestimating its return because it's against a fiat currency, when the risk-free rate of the world is 45%, because you can hold something in an energy-backed protocol, decentralized and secure, and the only way to increase risk is to trust somebody else with it, right? But that's a risk-free rate for the last 15 years of Bitcoin. And that's a risk-free rate of capital in the world. Most people think the risk-free rate is the bond rate. And so they're losing if you're investing in a house or real estate and you're getting 6% return compounded because money's going down at that rate, then you're losing 39% a year against Bitcoin. And eventually you'll see that. But if you're a venture fund now investing on top of that, and your risk-free rate is 45%, and you wouldn't make an investment unless you thought you'd beat that, then the only way to beat that is to create lots of value and denominate the balance sheets in Bitcoin. And then you would have venture returns on top of a venture asset by creating value in the free market. That seems so simple, yet it's so hard for people to understand. But why, as it's become easier for people to understand and seeing kind of returns in the fund and seeing what's happening and seeing the value creating, more and more people, just like you'd expect, are coming in to drive it. We're just really early in that process.
Excuse me. Yeah, I do remember when you told me you were going to start a fund, and I did. I thought, fuck me, he's taking a flyer on this because I think perhaps a lot of people thought, oh yeah, well, he's probably done this before. Like, he was a businessman. He knows all the ins and outs and all this kind of stuff. Whereas I knew that you hadn't come from that world. You'd
Yeah,
had touch points
I'm
with
a,
it on
I'm a,
the other side.
I'm an entrepreneur, not a business. Yeah, not a
Right.
VC.
And you'd had touch points with VCs on the other side. What I love about what you said there at the beginning is, we haven't had a failure yet. You didn't once mention an exit, whereas like the venture capitalists in the fiat world, they don't count their failures. There's too many. Can't count them. They just count their exits, and the shorter the exit, the better. Like that's their metric. It's like deploy the money. We want this done, dusted, out within 9 to 18 months. We want our exit within 9 to 18 months. And if you fail, you fail. That was the 10 to 25% chance that we'd baked into this kind of like. Of course, that system is doomed to fail. Like,
Yeah, like why would crypto look like it does? Because
Mhm.
you've found a way to essentially use exit liquidity on the public. You found a way to tokenize things to be able to essentially screw people more. And a bunch of the LPs that are in there don't know that they're trading that wealth for more and more destruction. Or why the world would be reinforcing that when it can't be their fault.
Mhm.
When I think about exits in this, like what that was adding 4 Bitcoin a month or 5 Bitcoin a month or 6 Bitcoin a month, and maybe in time it's not adding that much, then what would the exit value be, right? Like I and again, a fund has to exit at some point, but how I think about it is maybe I create a different SPV for my own stuff that we don't exit at all, right? They exit, people have a choice to have an annuity in Bitcoin. The because you have to think about these things differently
Well, if you were to exit for fiat, you're just reinforcing the fiat system, right?
yeah, totally, and because of the way things are structured, there might be some that's part of the deal today. Like you have a whole bunch of public companies that are doing this, that they can trade, they can create. So that might be part of the deal to exit. So because we're so early in this transition, but eventually that exit isn't going to be exit for somebody else's exit liquidity. Eventually, what's happening in Bitcoin is the repricing of everything for solid businesses that provide value. And that and today those solid businesses that are providing value are way underappreciated by the fiat system because they're pricing in the fiat dollars.
And the way I'm thinking about it now, so let's look at what an exit would look like. Company gets acquired, for example. That would be one thing.
Yeah.
Or the entrepreneurs want to buy themselves out of your holdings. That can all
Yep.
be done in Bitcoin.
Yeah, that could all be done in Bitcoin, and eventually there's going to be like the New York Stock Exchange won't look like the New York Stock Exchange. It'll be backed by Bitcoin, right? So with DLCs and different things, you're merging into what that could look like. That some of the very same companies that are in this could emerge into the new exchanges.
You got me thinking now, Jeff, because there's corporations out there. The board might be split. Some want to go on to start stacking Bitcoin onto the balance sheet. and others are, completely against it. But as we know, people are always out there. There's always corporate buyouts, and especially in the tech sector, right? So an interesting something's going to happen over the next 18 months where a fiat company is going to want to buy what a Bitcoin company, maybe in one of your funds, has created, right? XYZ company wants to buy a B.TC company because they've created the best, hottest, best UX to
Yeah.
onboard people onto Bitcoin, whatever it is, right? It's a tech thing. But the terms of the buyout by the entrepreneurs and by the people at the fund that are overseeing this would be you have to purchase us in Bitcoin.
Yeah, and then think about and that's kind of it's going to break people's brains,
Mm-hmm.
right? On
Mm-hmm.
on what that does, because the market is so early on understanding this risk-free rate, and actually, so in other words, the risk-free rate and the true rate of return, that the market today is way underpaying for these companies, and in time it'll way overpay, and then it'll balance. Um but it's going to be fascinating. And going back to what we started with, in if this is true, that we've never had a system like this, that is a global free market bounded by energy, and it's true you've always lived in a control system that looks different, then that's going to be chaotic and confusing across all different ideas and thoughts of, because you're trying, really what you're trying to do, and all, even this in this conversation, you're trying to merge your previous reality with the new one.
Yep.
It's wild. It's why it's such a fascinating space is that.
So what do you is happening almost weekly? There are new companies announcing that they're buying Bitcoin for their balance sheets.
I on that, it, yes, it's happening weekly, but it's still so early. Like I can't get into it, but I'm on the board of Core Scientific, right? Bitcoin mining company that has now HPC, giant Bitcoin mining company that's now high performance compute. And I just can tell you that even around Bitcoiners, the once you're a public company and everything, that how much pressure to not think in Bitcoin, the you're swimming in a sea of a whole bunch of people that don't understand this
Mm-hmm.
protocol yet. So we're just very, very early.
Yeah, it's going to be this cycle is going to be it's going to be nuts, mate. It's going to be
It's
absolutely
wild.
nuts.
Wild.
So before I came here, I was between podcasts. I had a quick dinner and I buzzed down to the local Bitcoin meetup because this was the monthly
Oh,
meetup, and I
awesome.
wanted to go and grab a quick pint. And I rushed in, rushed out. So they were like, "What the hell? Like you only just got here. You've had one pint. You're not going to hang out." I'm like, "Nah, I'm between pods. I've got to go." Like, all right. So who's coming on the podcast? I'm like, "Well, if you want to throw any questions at him, it's Jeff." So the first question was, Jeff who? I'm like, the Jeff, Jeff Booth. He's like, oh, like, why didn't you say the legend, Jeff? I'm like, right, okay. So yeah, there you go. That was one of the questions, more of a statement. The other one was when moon. Now, I'm not one for price predictions here on the Once Bitten podcast, Jeff, as you know, but I thought I'd pass along the question at the very least.
Yeah, I can't answer in those terms, because those terms reinforce the fiat
Dollars.
system.
Yep.
Yeah. And everybody who's talking in that reinforces just think of what you're doing, right? And it's okay, but you're getting rich in a piece of paper, and what you're really saying is, I'm going to trade my Bitcoin on this decentralized protocol for the piece of paper. And lots of people through this next cycle, are going to do that. Tons of people.
Yes.
I'm going to sell my Bitcoin and I'm going to trade it for a house or this because I've always wanted that house. Even though they know for sure if they wait another 4 years, the house will come down further in value. They'll still, and that's okay. But again, it's so natural. It's the centralizing system that's trying to centralize, and it'll be normal. So I try not to get into that. What's the terminal value of Bitcoin in today's dollars? And the only thing it has to stay is decentralized and secure to get there, 43 million. 900 trillion divided by 21 million. And so it's actually probably higher than that because of lost coins. 43 million in purchasing power today. That's today. But that purchasing power will go way higher because that's today's purchasing power without productivity flowing to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the so I if you think in terms of energy, decentralization is good. That is a that is a guarantee if it stays decentralized and secure. Why does it stay decentralized and secure? Because you choose to make it so. Period. If you don't choose, if everybody chose the other path, the centralized coin, it's not decentralized and secure. It fails. If everybody chose it's only a store of value, and it's not a medium of exchange, it fails. Because it centralizes from the very function. So that when moon, just know that, and know you make a choice.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to sell. You're right.
Which is
I've
okay.
said,
Which is
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But
You
as
can't
long
tell what.
yeah,
Yeah.
if they're filled with more people who know this because of the conversations like you and I are having, and more people are having, if those people are replaced with people further and further down the rabbit hole, then it stays decentralized and secure. And those people made a trade, just like the people bought the pizza, just like I spend every day on Noster. And I know that the money I spend on Noster today that buys coffees will eventually buy cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we we know that, and yeah, obviously, economic decision making machines. I've heard you use that before, and what does worry me, and I've expressed this before, is especially now with Wall Street's involvement, and especially now with certain political parties tweeting willy nilly whenever they want to move the price of Bitcoin with intent. People are going to get shaken out. If it moons, people are going to sell. If it craters, people are going to sell. And just trying to tune out of the noise is that, again, comes to stoicism, sitting on your hands, deleting Twitter if it takes that. If you don't have the the mental fortitude to tune out of it, you're going to get shaken out of your Bitcoin by design.
That's it, right? Or all of your time will be worried about what other people are doing. Like think about just I tell
And that's
this
bowing to fear on both ends
yeah,
of that scale, right?
exactly.
Oh my God, I've got too much wealth in Bitcoin. Oh my God, I've just lost so much. Sell on either end. It's
Yeah,
perfect. It's so psyopable
yeah.
that and controllable, especially if you have the narrative, if you have the media, if you have the power, which these
Here's a
parties that I just mentioned do.
here's a takeaway that each person can do right now today. I try to get my kids to do this. Add up your hours in a day, and then add up how much time you're doing the thing that you said. So feeding that, whether it's watching CNN or Fox or Twitter, and that time isn't actually productive. It's not driving any productivity for you or anything. It might be you. I'm not saying take away all your time of that because you might enjoy it. But if you're saying you enjoy it and it's starting to run your life, it's running your life, not you. So if you add up that time and you're really discerning with that, you realize I'll just make it a little smaller and I'll move my time to something else, whatever that time is, to something else. There's something else that you move your time into if it's producing kind of that value, whether it's hiking, being with your family, doing something, but truly present. Right? coming up with something that can help people on Bitcoin, podcast, meetup, a million different ideas. Moving that time to there is going to probably be a way better use of your time. And by doing so, the mere reflection of what you see will reinforce that time.
100%. Now, you just mentioned a hot topic of last year as well. Bitcoin only being a store of value, and it was never meant to be a medium of exchange. You and I both know who said that. I'm sure many of the ardent listeners would know as well. Parker Lewis actually just released an article yesterday or the day before. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, addressing this and basically saying, no, it has to be all things, like you just said, basically. Explain why you and I and many other people have come to the realization that the medium of exchange is possibly the most important part of the puzzle.
Well, I don't actually want to say the most important, because they're all important parts. But let's look through first principles and what this looks like. And let's start with, there are two different systems. Credit-based system can't allow deflation. Deflation is the free market. The result of that is the credit-based system has to be centralizing, right, and destroy the free market. The result of that is government has to get bigger, no matter what it does, because if it gets smaller, the free market can't absorb that, because that's deflationary, faster deflation, right? So these two things are opposite. So if you're giving your energy to the system, pricing in that centralizing system as a store of value, then at some point it has to come after and break the free market system. It has to. So, and that's where we don't see our own actions in it. So, and you might do that because you've been co-opted by that same government to say, yes, we'll, right, to and protect it as a store of value, but we'll still operate in this. And you might easily tune that out and realize, and instead of, so how could that allow deflation? That system couldn't still, because it's based on the piece of paper. So it's not the free market. It's a control system. It's just a different version of a control system with a whole bunch of new people getting rich by the control system, a whole bunch of other people getting poor. But it's still a zero-sum game inside that control system, and eventually you're going to be on the wrong side of that, if you're playing that game. But let's look through that same thing on, and let's be in this. Let's go back to the 2017 block size wars, and let's take the argument that people knew it had to be a currency. Through that lens of an argument, you could say increase made sense, right? And you could see a whole bunch of people on both wrong side, right side of that argument, because the more important first principle was it had to stay decentralized and secure. So that was really the fight. Well, there was an economic fight about it too, who controls it. But if you forget about the control, Montreal Accord, everything, forget about all of the people trying to control it and get more fees from it. If you just took the positive side of this, you could say, okay, Bitcoin could only do 5 to 7 transactions a second. That wouldn't support. And so we need to have increased block size for payments. And through just that lens, that narrow lens, you could say, okay, well, that's a fair argument. When you tie it to it breaking decentralized insecurity, then it's a totally unfair argument. So the small blocks won the day, right? And the other chain effectively died. And all of the people trying to control it through their idea also failed it by potentially trying to cheat it, trying to cheat the honest protocol. And what ends up happening is then, because of the scarcity there, lightning forms onto liquid forms, different ideas on the protocol layer that bring more functionality to Bitcoin, scaling, with different trade-offs that preserve the decentralization and security. And why would that happen? Because the free market demands it, and this is a protocol instead of a technology. And the protocols come in layers, and they're winner take all. So through that, then the first part of Lightning, because it would look like a garage project and it would be just starting, would fail all the time. People wouldn't be, and then there would be more people out there saying Lightning's a joke. We need to use this other coin because it's faster, cheaper, whatever. And without talking about how they all centralize. Right? And then Lightning gets stronger and stronger and better and all of these different things that it gets better and better. And most of these people don't even see how that could happen. And Lightning touches all those people, and it becomes a payment medium of exchange. You could say the same thing for privacy. What if this giant control structure tries to come after all of the nodes and all of the people? Which of course they will, if everybody's giving it power and everybody's centralizing. And most of those coins are in Coinbase, or then you could go down to mining and you could say these transactions you have to. Of course that's coming. But also coming, and this is what people don't see because it's moving in layers, and also what's coming is things like Ocean, things like Fediment, that so further distribute, create these nodes and pockets that cannot be found, add privacy to keep this resilient, and essentially that attack that has to come creates the knowledge from people that know it has to come, and they create the solutions long before the attack comes. That's just where we are in this, and you have a choice. Every single person has a choice. Where do they want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So yes, but if it doesn't become a medium of exchange, it fails spectacularly as a store of value.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Why would you be storing it if you couldn't use it?
Yeah, so you're storing it in the inflationary monetary system that it has to be centralizing, that has to usurp your power by stealing more money. So that would have to centralize, and it would have to be, and as you gave it more and more power, and as you thought that was the only thing, you would be making that outcome more probable to you, but not more probable to the people that are decentralized, secure, running nodes, running the other system. Only more probable to you by measuring in that system and giving it more of your energy.
So, where you are leading us there, these attacks, they're coming, they're bound to, it's inevitable. We talk about this a lot in the Bitcoin space, and I still, a lot of people just shrug it off. Like, yeah, no, that could never happen again. We talk about Executive Order 6102, which happened in 1933 in the United States, where Franklin D. Roosevelt, within 2 weeks of taking office, signed the Emergency Banking Act, I think, first, and then used that to then confiscate everybody's gold. You had to show up at your local licensed Federal Reserve Bank, member bank, and turn over your gold. And whether you were an individual or a huge company that was storing gold in your coffers on your balance sheet, the same thing will happen. Like, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And Coinbase being an exact perfect example, very much a honeypot for the flick of a pen from a regulator to say, under the Emergency Banking Act of or whatever legislation they want to make, we will need to bring these holdings of this company under our wing, and any other companies and any other. You can just imagine like the word salad that they could come up with to scare people into doing this. I think it's a serious threat and something that's probably inevitable. How do you think about that?
Yeah, a threat in a threat to the protocol or a threat to pricing? because the
A
only
threat.
threat that,
Yeah, okay. The way I think about it is a threat to the individuals that have got their freaking keys on the exchanges.
yes,
They're going to get rugged.
exactly. So
That's where my yeah.
that's why I
So
said the risk-free
is it
rate
a
of the
threat to the
world.
protocol? No.
But you could say, is it a threat to the protocol? It's a threat to the protocol if enough people don't run nodes, economic nodes, creating the other thing. Then if enough people just said, oh yeah, we'll trust in the government to do X, then it's a threat to the protocol. Right. But
Mm-hmm.
it's but uh but just the knowledge once seen of what decentralized and security means, once you see that, then you realize that it's actually not a threat because we are Bitcoin. We literally are Bitcoin, because without us running nodes, without creating all of the value that comes on top of it, teaching other people,
Mm-hmm.
you realize it's and I've said this many times, but it's the best of us inscribed into a network for the best for us, right? And because the other thing I don't know if you saw my thing on Noster recently, but throughout human history, um, or if you just said in game theory, um, and if you did payoff matrices in game theory, and you created models to essentially say, you will not get caught, no matter what, you won't get caught, and we're going to keep on increasing the amount of dollars to infinite, to when will you cheat? 97.5% of people will cheat. And they say that the kind of the numbers I've seen are kind of between 2.5% and 10%, but let's use 10%. So 90% of people cheat. 10% of people, even with an unlimited payback and they wouldn't get caught, won't cheat. And what are they saying about themselves in that? Said they're saying my personal integrity
Mm-hmm.
can't be bought for any price. But when you actually look through history and the monetary system and everything else through that same lens, you can see this playing out in everything. You can see this playing out in Nazi Germany. Right, you can see it playing out in every war. Some people they have this internal conviction that no matter what, they want. And what ends up happening in that internal conviction, and what most of those people throughout history die. Why? Because the cheaters can kill them, right? And aggregate power. And those people become a threat to society because they won't cheat. A threat to the status quo because they won't cheat. In fact, I think most of the religious figures throughout time are that. And then we celebrate those people, because they're actually talking to our higher self. What we want to do, yet we can't find it in ourselves to do. Right. I think that's actually what's those are the stories we tell Gandhi, right, all that through what ends up happening, those people. What does Bitcoin give those people? And 10% is a big number of people. It gives them anonymity and insight and security in a decentralized network that those people protect everybody else. And those are the nodes that I speak to. Those are the people that are building to. And what we have to assume is, and kind of I like the slay your heroes idea in Bitcoin, is we have to assume some of those people will still cheat. Right? When you see the certain first actor today talking about Bitcoin and how they've changed their tune, that's what you're seeing, right? You're seeing somebody taking potentially a different act. He hasn't proved it yet. Maybe he sides on the, but don't trust, verify, and we'll see, right? But the you can start to see that, and you can start to see in around the people who you spend time with. I know, I can't guarantee, but I pretty much guarantee the people that I know wouldn't cheat no matter what. Those people I spend a lot of time with in Bitcoin. Those people are, when I say we are Bitcoin, they are the nodes, they are the value, they're creating They're creating all sorts of path forward for this to thrive. So what happens when the cheaters come after that? It won't matter. They can't find them. And those people won't change. It won't change the protocol to be able to be centralized. So what would happen to the cheaters? It'll look like 2017 on steroids.
Mhm. Well, I just wonder how far away we are from all of this playing out. And one thing I've said in the past is people, we're so fixated on the wrong, the wrong number go up. It's number of people go up that matters.
Yeah.
And that goes up every day, right?
Yep.
There's more people join the protocol and the network every day than leave it. That's a one-way train.
Yep.
And
I think about it as this giant funnel. 8 billion people in this funnel.
Mhm.
8 billion people at various degrees of understanding what we're talking about right now. You're at a 10, 9 or 10. I'm at a 9 or 10. Maybe there's 20 levels and I don't know that yet. But there's a whole bunch of people that aren't even at 1 yet. There's a whole bunch of people that are at 3 and 4 that are actually in the other system trying to get rich in Bitcoin. And some of those people are going to get down to 9 and 10 too and join us on the decentralized protocol building for an abundant future. And so everybody will in time. It's their choice of when and how. And it's going to be chaotic. It's going to be chaotic for the ones. It's going to be really chaotic for the ones who are giving most of their time to the other system because they don't know that they're actually reinforcing it with their actions, and it's essentially preying on their energy, getting stronger by stealing their energy.
Mm-hmm. Right, let's switch up to Noster.
Yep.
Because I know you're heavily involved daily, posting on it. You love it. I want to get your thoughts on it, and just let the people know what they're missing out on if they haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's early, but it's not just a Twitter clone. It's going to be everything. It's going to be a communications tool that's outside of the existing centralized structure. And what ends up happening in network effects and why they also break down is the definition of a network effect is every single additional person adds more value to all people. And they become really strong. That's the same thing that's happening on the US dollar today. Same thing that's happening in Twitter today. Same thing that's happening in Amazon. Same thing that's happening in Google. But as they centralize, that can't be true anymore because they have to decide who sees more, who gets to see more of whoever and who gets less. And so they have to make certain choices. And in Amazon, it would be what products don't get seen, what products do get seen. And Google, same thing. But who is right to listen to, who is wrong. Twitter, same thing. And they have to do that for the centralization. So the network effect breaks down. It can feel powerful while it's still there, and it can feel, well, if I move to Noster, which is emerging on this network effect, then I don't see all of these people and they're not there yet, so I'm going to stay here. But that's just because of how early we are. The difference between network effects at protocols like we have on Bitcoin and Noster and a bunch of other what's being built and all interoperable together. The difference there is it's at the protocol level and all of the value flows to you forever. So the network effect can go on forever. It's going to, and as more people get censored, blocked, AI comes in and is their feed is a garbage and because it's just all bots everywhere, the more people will move over to the protocol level that has more value and that value will explode. So if you're not on Noster, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Just like if you weren't in Bitcoin in 2011, right? You could come in later and pay more, right? But if you're on Noster now and you're part of that ecosystem and building that ecosystem, what do you think and learning from all of the different things that are happening now, what do you think your value will be to new people joining? And so so yes, it's still early, but it's remarkable what's happening and how fast it's happening, and all of the different pieces that are making this better, easier, faster, and and no one can ever take your followers. No one can ever take your data. It's yours. You can move clients, and have it all. So it's a really compelling part of the protocol.
Yeah, it's very cool. I really enjoy it. It's been fun, and I remember Mastodon and Tusky and Zion and all of these other shots, right? At taking, if you come for the king, you better not miss, right? But Twitter just whatever. Clubhouse, that was a brand new idea that was freaking amazing when it first started, and then Twitter Spaces, and now nobody. I mean, I say nobody, but hardly anybody goes over to Clubhouse now that I speak to on a day-to-day basis. It's all done on Twitter Spaces. Noster, I'm sure, has its own thing going on right now. It was
Not
Nests,
Noster,
right?
Noster nests,
Yeah.
and what I would suggest is if you're going to do a space, run a nest at the same time and
Hmm.
move people from one to another,
Hmm.
and start to learn how these things work, because all of this functionality is going to develop, and there's going to be new winners, you being one of them, right? The So I left behind what 375,000 followers on Twitter.
Hmm.
I still have it for DMs, and sometimes a spaces, but I don't go to it anymore at all. The For Noster, on Noster, I think I have 150,000 followers on Noster already, but it's way more engagement than the 370,000
Hmm.
has on.
Oh
Um,
yeah, and much
um,
better usually.
yeah,
No bots to attack you, right?
and
Some are creeping in a little bit.
yeah, there will be, but it's different. It's earlier. I can't believe what I get to learn from a whole bunch of other people that are in the space and
Mhm.
building the next pieces of technology, build the next parts of the protocol in that.
So
Uh,
here's the one thing I've heard, mentioned a lot by people that are still trying to grok Noster because again, we're early. What's the business model? That's the main pushback from people. Like, how are entrepreneurs going to build a Noster and make money from it?
oh, this is interesting because you remember how much we see in this. So um, uh, Noster is the protocol. There is no business model on the protocol. So what the free market demands is people provide more value to you. And then because as they provide more value to you, it creates an opening that other people try to compete with that value. Prices keep falling. That's kind of the point. And
Mhm.
so what you're seeing described in this is is a whole bunch of companies trying to create value in this, and prices also falling. In other words, and prices falling, in other words, more value accruing to users, right? Instead of getting sucked out of users. As more value accrues to users, some of those, and I think this is a measurement problem that people are doing. So people think they need to make this much money in fiat to be able to have a profitable business in the new world, and they don't, because if they're measuring in Bitcoin and they're aggregating even small amounts of Bitcoin onto that, then Sats every day will turn into a very viable business. There, it's the measure. It becomes the measurement problem. Now that business will not be a 50,000 person business like Google, or that has needs all of these people to be able to extract more from. It won't be like that. It might be a 1 or 2 person business using AI to drive all the value to, and that 1 or 2 people make a whole bunch of money through Sats, and it might not be a VC type of business. It might be still a very, very profitable business. And so there's all these types of ideas um, emerging from the same thing that we just talked about for spend a long time. It's the mismatch of people thinking they need to do the other thing, the VC model out of the extractive system on the new model that has ideas around their models broken.
So I guess one person might be thinking, well, that just gets solved because Twitter just enable Bitcoin likes, for example, and then everybody starts getting paid over there. I know what my
So
comeback is, but I'd just like to hear what your take on that is, because I'm sure you've heard these objections.
yeah, so that could certainly slow down Noster's development. It actually would slow down Noster's development, but it wouldn't. It would slow it down for a time before it came back, because that system still has to centralize. You can't imagine. Maybe Elon eventually, maybe he's in that funnel. Maybe he's a 3 or a 4. He understands all of this, and he'll eventually be a 10 and actually be part of the decentralized security. I suspect not. When I watch his actions, when I
I
watch what
suspect,
I,
I
I
certainly suspect not.
yeah, when I watch his actions,
There's
I
very little
suspect
integrity that I see.
exactly. I suspect not, but um, but the only way to actually stop that centralized model and how he looks at the world is to essentially embed Noster into Twitter, and to the only way, because otherwise it's a centralized version that is going to be impaired at some point by the very same thing.
Plus, also, let's say they did enable tiny Bitcoin payments for likes. You just exploded the Lightning Network, and you've just basically, by trying to centralize, at the same time you're decentralizing by opening up Bitcoin payments to the person you've never heard of before that has 1.5 million followers on Twitter, who's
Yep,
never ever heard of Bitcoin. And now all of a
exactly.
sudden they have, and people are liking that. What? Like, this. So everything's good for Bitcoin. We all know that all the time. Um, the game theory of it is beautiful. So have we done Noster? Was there anything? Is there anything specific that you wanted to highlight about Noster?
Nothing really. I'd encourage people to go visit Gigi and Pablo and in Madeira, because what's coming out of sovereign engineering and some of the projects. Now, some of them are earlier, like Blossom and others that are coming out of projects there, open source projects and other projects there. Um, Build far greater functionality across this, and because it's a protocol, it's just I add this, I add this, I add this. I don't need a whole bunch of, like, if you think about adding lightning to your service or adding this or to, they're all, you don't you don't have to build technology the way you used to have to do the entire stack, implement it to Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud and all centralized. That is changing really quick by the tools and by some of the technology that people are building into this protocol that makes essentially anybody be able to click a button and deliver value. So
Yeah,
so the only thing I would say is the more time, just like Bitcoin, just like more time you spend understanding this at a fundamental level, and then seeing some of the things that are going on in the ecosystem, you start to see different areas that you want to contribute.
absolutely. Gigi, Pablo, they run the sovereign engineering cohort. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I guess I think there's 4 different cohorts, but they're in I think they're in their 4th one.
Yeah, there was no coincidence in the acronym being SEC. By the way, there are no coincidences with GG.
Yeah.
So people can go and check that out and sign up and go and do, like, I think they run them like 6 to 8 weeks or something, like courses, and it's just a really cool, high intense, high energy smashing stuff. It's like a hackathon, right, for plebs to go and just build and
Yeah,
be
and
among their people.
you're around some really cool people who understand this and see and live their time in this. And so as you're in there, you see the intersection of these ideas create new ones and create value. So we're early in that, but it's really fast, really exciting to see.
And it's great to go and hang in Madeira with all the other plebs there. And last time I checked with Andre, over 300 merchants accepting.
Is it 300 now?
Oh man,
Wow.
he's going crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was like when we did the conference, what were there 43 or
Oh
less than that?
yeah. Yeah. Like that conference has just lifted.
That was
And there's
that was 1 year ago.
exactly 1 year ago. 1 year
Exactly one
ago.
year ago.
And look
And
at what's happened now. And he's got a young lad working from Charlie, I believe, shout out, who's just been like going like real boots on the ground, pleb work, getting in front of the businesses and explaining it to them and taking the time and then having the support of the community there because it's all right. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'll accept this funny geek internet money. And then within like 45 minutes, someone's there. Can I pay in Bitcoin here?
yeah,
Like,
their
really?
business
Can I
expands.
buy a fishing rod? I've never fished in my life, but you accept Bitcoin?
Awesome. It's awesome.
So, Jeff, I know you read or use a big user of Audible just to download books. I'm the same. Shill me like the best two or three books that you dug
Oh,
into last year. They could be Bitcoin related, completely random, esoteric shit. Like what do you have?
oh my God. When um the
What's that?
Kybalion, the
Rebellion.
Kybalion. Yeah.
How'd you spell that?
Kybalion.
What was that
Uh,
about?
you have to read it. You're
Okay.
gonna how it's always been all connected. How the how all of this is. Anyways, you read it. You'll like it.
Okay.
I did read Rockefeller, and like so everything you're saying that I know and everything else.
Which one? Which
Jake Jacob Nor
Nordegrand.
yeah.
Yeah, Nordeguard. Yeah, Rockefeller controlling the game. Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I've done that one too. Yep.
Know enough to like you could read it if you want. But the I actually nuclear war I thought was like some of these are dark,
Mm,
but um uh, I read again, and I've read it before, Power versus Force by David Hawkins.
mm,
Um, I just remembered how much I liked it. Gene Keys,
right.
that's probably enough for now.
Gene Keys. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Brief history of intelligence was quite good too.
Okay. I got some. My pile is loading up. Brief history of intelligence. Right. Okay. Uh, Notes have been made. Yeah. The Nordegaard's book was very interesting, incredibly well researched, very very deep on many subjects. Then he throws in a paragraph about Bitcoin and about like how it's never gonna win. I'm like, oh my god, dude! Like,
Crazy.
I almost put the book down at that point. Like I rage quit the book, and I'm like, no, I better go back and read the rest of it because everything else is so well meticulously researched. But like, god damn it.
But it's wild, and by the way, it just explains exactly to you. Just because somebody's written a book or I've written a book, it doesn't mean they're not wrong on some other things.
Absolutely.
It just shows how deep somebody could be about the problem, and anchored their problem to all of this and researched it all and stays there, right? And for their view of the world, they would just reinforce it, make it true without ever being able to come up to see the other. So I when I see those types of things, I can take, just like you can, just like you can take the best part of anything and leave the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Best part of somebody, how I think about this in people is we all have our unique genius. Every single person you have has your unique genius, but we'd spend most of the time talking about the thing that they're terrible at.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why? Right. leave that behind. Talk about the thing that they're really good at, and move on. Learn from them and what they're really great at, and move on.
I don't know. I don't know why. Have we will never know. I mean, are we just
I think it's because
wired that way?
I think it's our ego wanting to make us better than it, us comparing and saying we have to be better, and then we talk to all of the other people about that person. It's just insanity and the wasted time in it. So take simple rule. Take the thing each person has genius. Celebrate the genius and learn from their genius. Drop the other things because you do whatever. Yeah, drop those other things because it doesn't change your life at all.
Now, this crosses over, like there's a real nuance point here with self-censorship as well, right? People will, you see it, people will not talk about something that they might believe because they believe it's going to shine badly on them or perhaps hurt their reputation in some way that they've built up,
Yeah, you
over the
want to be
last
part. You
four or
want to be
five
part
years.
of. You want to be part of the crowd, the love and belonging. Like the
Hmm.
in group in and out group bias come from the same thing. So in group bias, if you belong to a group, then you must think it's a better group, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't belong to it. Why would I belong to the worst group? So it creates this I'm better, not just different or not do I see things differently. It creates this, and a lot of this happens in Bitcoin too.
Of course, Bitcoin
Yeah,
versus gold bugs, Bitcoin
yeah,
versus fiat bros, Bitcoin versus crypto bros.
yeah, yeah,
It's all
exactly.
the same
So
thing.
what is the thing you actually agree on or don't agree on and everything else? What is and there is no group, not no group that isn't made up with individuals with all different ideas. Right? It's just a fabrication of in our mind to be able to simplify somebody else is this so that we can be better or worse, so we can matter in relation to that. There is no such thing. It's there's no such thing in a family. There's no such thing in any group. There's constant differences of opinion when you get down to different things that come out of our minds, how we see the world.
So you named your fund Ego Death. What does that term mean to you? What does ego death mean to you?
And funny enough, everybody says that, and I think they say it uh, because I talk like it all the time, but I didn't name the fund. Right? So Nico and Andy came up with the idea of the
Uh-huh.
fund, and I
I
think
guess
it
it'd be
actually,
egoistic to
yeah.
name your own fund, right?
um, but that would be a high bar, right? But it's also a bar that is imposed by Bitcoin over time, right? That over time, people are going to have to kind of let that go over time, and you'll see in society, you'll see a rise in consciousness because of the same thing. I think you already start starting to see it in Bitcoin. You start to see it, and like say you're in my friendship, right?
Mhm.
Just you and I, right? It, at the heart of it, like it's about a deep caring and more of this, and so the um and you could repeat that with a whole bunch of other people that you care about. You know who they are, right? Um, so but I'm also quite aware that that ego death is one of those names as a fun that could also create a lot of friction because it's viewed through different people differently. Probably viewed differently through even different members of our fund, right? And what that looks like, and it has connotations. For some people, it's about plant medicine, right, or psychedelics, and I think why it is because they've actually gotten to a spot that's so deep in that state and then trying to get back and trying to hold it, right? You can get to the same state in meditation, I've been to the same state, and trying to hold it. And then the question is, can you hold it all the time? What does that look like? As you go back into the world, you feel like you're completely connected to everything. And then how do you stay connected to everything? Because it's such a crazy feeling, and everything's easy. You see love in everyone else, and everything's super easy. Question is, can you stay in that energy more often? And as you can stay in that energy more often, you want to stay in that energy more often because everything's easy. So that's what I would say that's what it means to me.
Right. Perfect. And that is raising consciousness as well, what you're talking about. And this is a really, I never, this is where people are going to be like, oh no, they're going to take it to woo woo land. Like, bring it back, guys. But it happens, right? I'd never meditated in my life really until over the last 5-6 years, where I just try and do it. And again, that word is so loaded. It's so many different things to so many different people. You don't have to be dressed in an orange robe, shave your head, and try and levitate on a rock. Like there's different with that. You can breathe. You can just sit in a quiet corner for 10 minutes. You don't even need to close your eyes if you don't want to. There are different ways to do it. Then there's people that have opened me up to thinking about psychedelics, which is something I still have never done. No, I've never gone down that route. I'd never been exposed to it until talking to people in the Bitcoin space. So, I mean, what can you share? Have you ever, other than meditation, how do you do your meditation? Have you ever done psychedelics?
I haven't. I've done breath works and meditation. I still meditate every day. But and I'm not against psychedelics at all. In fact, I'm quite curious about them. But it I feel like the way where I get to in meditation describes exactly what somebody says they get to with psychedelics. Precisely. That's exactly the feeling. And then and so no, I haven't yet. But again, I'm not against it at all. I'm curious.
How does your meditation look, and how long has it taken you to like kind of figure that out? Because it is so different for everybody.
Um, and it's looked different across. I've been doing it for a long time, but effectively trying to still your mind, completely. So, still letting the thoughts come in and go, and then but not being bad. Just it is. And still and now I would put 10 to 20 minutes a day. I would just lie and meditate. I used to quite often with kind of headspace or an app to be able to do it.
I love that
Um,
app. Yeah, I need
yeah.
to do. Yeah, that was good.
And which helped develop a practice that and now I can get there like in an instant.
Awesome, mate. All right, Jeff, we've been going for 2 hours on the dot. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
um,
And I do not remember your previous answers to I have no clue.
um, I would actually give it to Elon because if he actually got down to why that's so important, he could because of how how much how many people kind of worship him. I don't think that that's the right answer right now that they should, but if he did, the impact he could make would be profound.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I hope he does, mate. I hope he does, because unfortunately he's doing a lot more harm than good right now. Anyway, we will leave it there. And I look forward to seeing you Helsinki for sure. I think we're going to see each other there, BTC Helsinki in August.
Yep.
Uh, Otherwise, until next time, mate. Thanks for
Until
coming
next
on.
time, my friend. Yeah.
All right, brother. Take care.
Okay, you too. See you, buddy.